invitation arrived on the night I wanted to die. 2 years to the day since Alexander's death, I sat in my darkened apartment, staring at the bottle of pills I'd been hoarding like a miser counts coins. The moon hung like a cold eye outside my window, watching me balance on the knife's edge between grief and surrender. That's when I heard it, the whisper of paper sliding beneath my door, soft as a lover's breath. My bare feet made no sound on the hardwood floor as I crossed the room. The envelope gleamed silver in the darkness, its edges pulsing with an otherworldly light that made my skin prickle. My fingers shook as I lifted it, feeling its weight settle into my palms like a living thing, warm and urgent against my cold flesh. The Midnight Palais calls you, Evelyn Graves. A single dance could resurrect what you've lost. Come when twilight bleeds across the valley, where time bends to the rhythm of eternal hearts. The words moved across the parchment like shadows given form, and music whispered through my apartment, a melody that clawed at memories buried so deep I'd forgotten they existed. As a principal dancer with the Metropolitan Ballet, I'd thought I understood how music could possess a soul. This was different. This reached into the hollow spaces Alexander's death had carved from me and filled them with something dark and desperate. I hadn't danced since the accident, hadn't so much as stretched at the bar in my living room, though it stood there like an accusation, gathering dust and broken dreams. But standing there with that cursed invitation, my body began to move of its own accord, executing steps to choreography I'd never learned. The melody grew stronger, wrapping around my ribs like phantom arms, and I could almost feel Alexander behind me, his breath hot against my neck as we moved through our final pas de deux. The stage lights had malfunctioned during our Swan Lake rehearsal. One moment we were soaring through the grand jeté that would have made our careers. The next, sparks rained from above like falling stars. Alexander pushed me clear with those strong, graceful hands that had lifted me through 1,000 dances, and the burning scaffolding crushed him instead. I escaped with a shattered ankle and a guilt that ate me alive from the inside out, consuming everything that had once made me whole. The doctors said I would dance again. They didn't understand that without Alexander, there was no point in moving at all. How could I explain that we had been two halves of the same soul, spinning through life as one entity? I should have burned the invitation, should have flushed those pills and gotten help. Instead, I pressed the parchment against my chest and felt its heat seep through my thin nightgown, past skin and bone, straight into the frozen wasteland where my heart used to beat. For 7 nights, the invitation called to me. Each evening, it grew brighter, more insistent, until the silver script seemed to burn against my retinas. I researched the Midnight Palais obsessively, finding only whispers and fragments scattered across obscure forums and deleted blog posts. A place where the veil grows thin, dancers marked by tragedy, the dance of 1,000 deaths. Sarah, my former dance partner, had warned me about such places during our coffee dates when she still believed I might return to the company. "There are stories," she'd said, her voice dropping to a whisper as she glanced around the cafe. "Places that appear to dancers who've lost everything. They promise redemption, but the price..." She'd shuddered, unable to finish, her fingers trembling around her cup. On the 7th night, I found myself standing before my mirror in a gown I didn't remember buying. It flowed like liquid starlight, clinging to curves I'd forgotten I possessed after months of eating nothing but grief and rage. The mask that materialized beside it, delicate silver filigree set with moonstones that glowed with their own inner fire, felt warm against my skin, as if it had been waiting centuries for my face. My reflection looked like a stranger. My dark hair, usually scraped back in a severe bun that spoke of discipline and denial, fell in waves past my shoulders. My body, which had grown sharp and angular with grief, curved and swayed beneath the impossible fabric. I looked alive for the first time in 2 years, dangerous and beautiful and ready to dance with the devil himself. The valley stretched before me in perpetual twilight, painted in shades of violet and silver that belonged to no earthly sunset. The Midnight Palais rose from the mist like a fever dream, all soaring spires and impossible architecture that shifted in my peripheral, as if the stones were alive with anticipation. Music drifted from its windows, and my soul ached with recognition. Other figures moved through the ethereal landscape, elegant shadows in evening wear, their faces hidden behind masks that caught and reflected the strange light like captured stars. Some walked alone, but most moved in pairs, drawn toward the grand entrance like moths to a flame that promised to either transform or consume them entirely. The path wound through gardens where roses bloomed in impossible colors, midnight black with silver edges, deep purple with veins of gold that pulsed like heartbeats. Their perfume was intoxicating, filling my lungs with something that tasted like memory and desire, like all the kisses I'd never had the chance to steal. As I climbed toward the palace, visions flickered at the edges of my consciousness. Candlelit ballrooms where women in corsets waltzed with men in military dress, gaslit theater stages where passion played out in 3 acts, modern dance studios with wall-to-wall mirrors reflecting infinite possibilities. In each scene, I danced with a partner whose touch felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. But when I tried to focus on his face, the images dissolved like smoke on water. The massive doors opened at my approach, releasing a wave of music that crashed over me like a physical force. The ballroom beyond defied physics, its ceiling a living tapestry of constellations that wheeled and danced in time with the ghostly orchestra. The floor rippled like dark water, reflecting not the dancers above, but glimpses of other times, other places, other lives where love had bloomed and withered and bloomed again. Couples whirled across the impossible space, their forms sometimes solid, sometimes translucent as morning mist. Some wore contemporary evening wear, while others danced in costumes from centuries past, Victorian bustles that swept across the floor like storm clouds, medieval gowns that pooled around bare feet, 1920s beadwork that caught and scattered the supernatural light like captured raindrops. You came. The voice behind me carried the weight of centuries and the heat of a lover's whisper. I turned, and the world tilted on its axis, gravity shifting to accommodate the impossible. He stood in the shadow of a marble pillar, tall and lean in a black tailcoat that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His mask was obsidian shot through with veins of gold, but it couldn't hide the sharp angle of his jaw or the mouth that curved in a smile both familiar and devastating. His dark hair fell in waves past his collar, and when he stepped into the light, I saw his eyes, deep blue touched with silver, ancient and new all at once. Those eyes. God help me, I knew those eyes. I'm Roberto, he said, extending a gloved hand with the grace of a man who had learned to move like poetry itself. Would you honor me with this dance? My heart stuttered, then began beating so hard I was sure he could hear it echoing through the supernatural ballroom. Every instinct I possessed screamed that this moment balanced on the edge of forever, that my answer would determine not this night, but every night that came after. I'm Evelyn, I whispered, placing my hand in his. The moment our skin touched, the world exploded. Lightning raced up my arm and the ballroom blurred and shifted around us, reality folding like origami in the hands of a master. Suddenly we were dancing through different eras. A waltz in a medieval castle where torches cast dancing shadows on stone walls. A quadrille in a Georgian manor while rain lashed the windows. A sultry tango in a Prohibition-era speakeasy thick with smoke and secrets. In each scene, our bodies move together with perfect understanding, muscle memory reaching back through lifetimes I couldn't quite grasp. "You're beginning to remember," Roberto murmured, his lips brushing my ear as we spun through what looked like a Victorian ballroom, heavy with the scent of hothouse flowers. "It happens sooner each time, but remembering is only the first step." His voice sent heat spiraling through me, awakening parts of my soul I'd thought died with Alexander. But this wasn't Alexander. This was someone older, darker, infinitely more dangerous. Someone who looked at me as if I were the answer to prayers he'd been whispering for centuries. "Where are we?" I gasped as we moved through the steps of a dance I'd never learned but somehow knew by heart, each movement flowing into the next, like water finding its course. "The Midnight Palais exists between heartbeats, between moments," he said, pulling me closer until I felt the heat radiating from his body, until his scent, sandalwood and midnight air, filled my lungs. "It's where souls come to remember, and sometimes to break free." Around us, other couples danced with increasing desperation. Some faded like morning mist, their forms growing translucent as they lost themselves in the rhythm. Others grew more solid, their movements taking on a ritualistic quality that made my skin crawl with a recognition I didn't want to acknowledge. "What are we?" The question escaped before I could stop it, torn from somewhere deep inside my chest. Roberto's grip tightened, his fingers burning through the thin fabric of my gloves. "We are lovers cursed to find one another in every lifetime, to love with every breath we take, and to lose one another to tragedy each time the wheel turns." His voice dropped to a growl that vibrated through my bones. "I am the guardian of this place, bound to guide others through the dance of 1,000 deaths until my own soul finds redemption." "And me?" I barely managed to form the words around the tightness in my throat. "You are my heart's other half, trapped in the same endless cycle." His eyes blazed behind his mask, burning with an intensity that should have terrified me. "We've danced this dance for centuries, Evelyn. In medieval courts and modern theaters, in war-torn cities and peaceful gardens. Always finding one another, always losing one another, always returning here for one more chance to break the curse that binds us." The music changed, becoming something primal and raw that seemed to pulse in time with my racing heart. As we moved through increasingly complex steps, memories crashed over me like tsunami waves. Stolen kisses in palace gardens while nightingales sang overhead. Desperate couplings in candlelit chambers as armies marched past our doors. Final embraces on battlefields and deathbeds where we swore we'd find one another again. "Alexander," I breathed, understanding blooming like a poisonous flower in my chest. "In this lifetime, you were Alexander." Pain flickered across his perfect features like candlelight in a storm. Different names, different faces, but always the same souls reaching for one another across the void. The stage accident wasn't chance, my love. The Palais was calling us back, but I arrived first. I've been waiting for you. The revelation should have terrified me. Instead, it filled me with a dark euphoria that made my blood sing and my body come alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. How do we break it? How do we escape this cycle? His laugh was bitter as winter wind. That's what we've been trying to figure out for 700 years. The chandelier above us pulsed with otherworldly light, and the music took on an urgency that made my soul ache with longing. Around us, the remaining dancers blurred into streaks of color and desperate motion, their own stories playing out in parallel to ours like infinite reflections in a broken mirror. The final movement approaches, Roberto warned, spinning me until my gown flared around us like wings of liquid darkness. We must complete the dance of 1,000 deaths before the last note fades, or be trapped here until the next century brings another chance. Instead of answering, I pulled him down and crushed my mouth to his. The kiss tasted of starlight and tears, of countless reunions and bitter partings. His lips moved against mine with desperate hunger, centuries of longing condensed into this single moment of contact. I felt his heart hammering against his ribs, tasted the salt of tears I hadn't realized I was crying. When we broke apart, we were alone in a ballroom that had transformed into something from a fever dream. Walls of shifting shadow, a floor that rippled like black water, and above us, a ceiling of swirling constellations that pulsed in time with our racing hearts. The dance that followed defied description. We moved through lifetime after lifetime, each step burning with memory and desire. I felt the joy of our first meetings, a knight and a lady in a moonlit garden where roses climbed the walls, a soldier and a nurse in a field hospital while shells burst overhead, a choreographer and his star in a Broadway theater where dreams came to life under hot lights. I experienced the passion of our loves, desperate couplings in hidden chambers while the world burned outside, tender moments stolen between rehearsals when we thought no one was watching, wedding nights that blazed with promise and hope for the future. And I endured the agony of our partings, plague and warfare, accidents and betrayals, always something that tore us apart when we thought we'd found our forever. Always the same pattern: love, loss, death, rebirth, and the endless search for one another across the spinning centuries. Through it all, our bodies moved in perfect synchronization as we rewrote the story of our souls with every turn, every lift, every moment our eyes met across the cosmic darkness. His hands on my waist burned like brands, marking me as his across every lifetime we'd shared and every one yet to come. But as we danced, a terrible understanding dawned. The curse wasn't the tragic endings, it was our fear of them. In every lifetime, we'd loved one another while looking over our shoulders for the shadow of death, never fully surrendering to the present because we were so terrified of losing it. We'd held back pieces of ourselves, thinking we could somehow minimize the pain by never loving completely. "Roberto," I gasped as we spun through the final measures, my gown streaming behind us. "We don't need to break free from our past. We need to break free from our fear of the future." His eyes widened with recognition and something that might have been hope. Each lifetime, we hold back part of ourselves, attempting to protect our hearts from the pain we know is coming. But that reservation, that fear, that's what keeps us bound. I finished, the truth hitting me hard. We create our own tragedy by expecting it. The music reached a crescendo that shook the very foundations of reality. The chandelier above us exploded into a shower of starlight, and the floor beneath our feet cracked, revealing not darkness, but a pure, brilliant light that made my eyes water. As the final movement of the Dance of 1,000 Deaths began, we stopped trying to escape our history. Instead, we embraced every moment, every emotion, every memory. Each turn was a celebration of our shared soul rather than an attempt to rewrite it. I poured every ounce of love I'd ever felt into the dance, holding nothing back, surrendering completely to the rhythm of our eternal hearts. The walls of the Midnight Palais dissolved, revealing glimpses of all the times and places we'd loved. Every garden we'd stolen kisses, every ballroom we'd waltzed until dawn, every quiet moment stolen from an unforgiving world. They flowed around us like a river of memories, beautiful and painful and perfect in their completeness. "Choose now," a voice echoed through the disintegrating reality, neither male nor female but ancient as time itself. "Choose your fate." I looked into Roberto's eyes and saw every version of him I'd ever loved. The noble knight who'd died defending my honor, the passionate artist who'd painted my portrait a dozen times, the devoted partner who'd died saving me from falling lights. "I choose us," I said, my voice ringing with a certainty that came from the depths of my soul. Not the beautiful moments, but the painful ones too. I choose to love you completely, knowing that every ending leads to a new beginning. And I choose you, he replied, his voice rough with an emotion that had been building for centuries. Not despite our history, but because of it. Every joy, every sorrow, every dance has led us to this moment. I choose to love you without reservation, without fear, without holding anything back. As the final note faded, the Midnight Palais shimmered and transformed. The eternal twilight lifted like a curtain rising on the greatest performance of our lives, revealing a dawn painted in shades of gold and rose that spoke of new beginnings. Around us, other couples emerged from the dissolving mist, souls who had been trapped in their own cycles, now free to move forward into whatever came next. Our masks crumbled to silver dust, and I saw Roberto's face clearly for the first time in this lifetime. Tears tracked down his cheeks, but his smile held the joy of 7 centuries of love finally set free. He was beautiful and terrible and mine in ways that transcended death itself. "What happens now?" I asked, reaching up to trace the sharp line of his jaw, memorizing every angle and plane. He caught my hand and pressed it flat against his chest, where I felt his heart beating strong and sure. "Now, my love, we dance not because we must, but because we choose to. And this time, we carry our past with us not as a burden, but as a gift. The knowledge that our love is strong enough to survive anything." The morning sun touched the remains of the Midnight Palais, transforming it into a garden where impossible roses bloomed in every color imaginable. In the distance, I heard the faint echo of our waltz, not as a chain binding us to the past, but as a promise of all the dances yet to come. Hand in hand, we walked into the dawn, our souls finally free to begin the greatest performance of our lives. The invitation that had brought me here dissolved into butterflies made of pure light, dancing around us before disappearing into the brightening sky like wishes taking wing. When I woke in my own bed the next morning, sunlight streaming through windows I'd kept curtained for 2 years, I might have believed it was all a dream, except for the single black rose with silver edges that lay on my pillow, still warm from another world's touch. And in my heart, I felt the familiar heat of Roberto's love, not from this lifetime, but from all the ones before and all the ones yet to come. The bottle of pills sat untouched on my nightstand, meaningless now. I had a different kind of forever waiting for me, one built not on the promise of no more pain, but on the certainty that whatever came, we would face it together. I rose and walked to my neglected bar, my body moving with a grace I'd thought was lost forever. As I stretched into first position, I felt Roberto with me, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a living presence woven into the fabric of my soul. When I danced now, I danced with the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes and the passion of a love that transcends death itself. Some loves are strong enough to endure not by defying fate, but by embracing it completely, turning even the darkest nights into a celebration of the light we create together. And perhaps that's the most powerful magic of all, the knowledge that true love doesn't need to escape its past to find its future. It needs only to surrender completely to every step of the dance, trusting that each turn brings us closer to where we're meant to be. In my dreams, we still waltz through ballrooms made of starlight, and I wake each morning with the taste of forever on my lips.